All right, let's get started, people. 32 people in the room. Sensational. And I know that some of you are actually in groups, so there's probably a few more there. Welcome along. My name's Ian Crawford, coming to you from a very wet and windy Perth, Western Australia. I hope you're all doing well. Just having a chat to Ryan there.
Been willing to make.
Having a chat with Liz has unmuted herself. So we'll just mute Liz. There we go. There we go. All right, a couple more people just come on in. All right, fantastic. So let's get started because we've only got an hour and I'd love to get as much as I possibly can into our time together. And really looking forward to this. It's my third session, I think, Kate, for doing some work with sailing. And I think it's a really important session, managing conflict and difficult people. Now, the thing to remember is this. If we look at the corporate and work world, the research shows us that we've got over 40% of the day, frontline leaders are dealing with conflict. Now, if we take that stat and we add competition, head-to-head competition, umpiring, refereeing, objective calls, subjective calls, parents who think their kids are world-class sailors, but the kids really suck, I think the level of conflict in the sporting arena, including sailing, would be way higher than 40%. Now, it's not all yelling and screaming type conflict that we sometimes perceive it is, but it's there and it can appear in multiple different ways. And tonight, or this afternoon, we are going to look at some tips and tricks, very quick, very fast, ways that we can implement to decrease the chance of conflict happening and increase the chance of dealing with it, whether it's conflict or just pain the backside people. All right, but before we do that, let's just do a couple of things. Just to make sure everything goes well tonight, just make sure that we stay engaged for 1 hour so we can get as much as we possibly can out of this. Mute your microphones. Be ready to comment, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Now, if you have any questions or any comments or any stories that you want to add to what we are talking about, then please, a couple of ways. Send me a message in the chat box or on the screen, or simply unmute yourself and tell me to shut up, and we can then have a chat. No problems at all, okay? So that's the way I'd like to. Now, for those who have never done this Zoomy type thing in regards to training, just a couple of tips because I will get you involved as much as I possibly can. To annotate or the ability to draw and type on the screen, we can do a couple of things. If you've got a laptop or a desk computer, I want you to search for the view menu, then options, and then choose the term annotate. Just mute that so not everyone hears my voice 1,000 times. A toolbar will appear, and that will allow you to text and draw and all that sort of stuff. Okay. For those people who are on iPads, iPhones, look for the symbol, usually with your name under it or the name that you've given your device. Click on it and all your drawing and typing functions will be there to be able to do that. You're probably looking for a T. If you click on T and then click on the screen, you can type. And for it to appear on the screen, you need to click away from it. So let's try this. Now you can either use my screen or my chat function, totally up to you. Where are you calling from? I know Ryan's from Melbourne and Kate and the crew are here in Western Australia, but where's everyone else calling from? I'm very interested. We got, well, someone's gone the drawing. Perth, Brisbane, Sydney, Toronto, as in Canada. Really? Give me a tick next to that. Really? Oh man, really? That's fantastic. Sydney, Mount Martha. I have no idea where that is, although it doesn't sound very watery. Brighton, from Townsville, Sydney, Northeast Victoria, Tasmania, Ballarat, Mount Martha, Toronto, New South Wales. Okay, that makes more sense. Because I guess, it's 4 o'clock in the morning in Canada as well. Okay, I'll just be an idiot. All right. Now, one of the reasons I get you to do that is because later on, I'll actually get you to type on the screen and do some circling and all those things that will try and keep you involved as much as we possibly can, rather than just listening to me. Now, one of the quirky things about Zoom is after that we've finished talking, I need to clear all the drawings or it follows us to the next slide. So let's start off with this. And we've got, like I said, we've got 1 hour, so we've got to keep going. So here's a really interesting thing. When we talk about conflict, and welcome along those people who have just joined us, that's fantastic, glad you're here. Some of the things we think about in regards to conflict is we tend to think about that yelling and screaming and pointing and waving their hands around type conflict. But that sort of conflict we classify as crisis. And what we do know from the research, and I bet you've got experiences of this as well, is that it's that crisis type, the crisis type conflict that occurs doesn't just happen. All right? It doesn't just go boop and it appears. We tend to go through these stages that allows us to move towards what we call discomfort to crisis. Now, let me give you an example, a sporting example that I've experienced in the sporting world that's occurred within an organisation that I was a parent and I was volunteering for. We turned up to this executive meeting and I'm sitting there quietly and everything's going well, and the boss, the president, starts the meeting. And halfway through the meeting, we got one person to my right who is talking away. And while they're talking, someone to my left interrupts them. And it was simply, they were talking about raising fees or something like that. And halfway through the person speaking, this other person over this side goes, "Oh, look, I think that's a really good idea. I think we should do this," and just interrupts. Now, the thing to remember is that when people do that, it doesn't necessarily mean they're being rude. Some people are just wired, as we'll see a bit later on, to talk over the top of people. And once they have an idea, they'll just want to talk. But you could see that the person who was speaking and was then interrupted sort of discomfort. They sort of moved around their chairs and they didn't say anything, and they shook it off. "Oh, Yachting New Zealand is joining us. The whole of New Zealand. That's fantastic." That's just that. Not many of that people, really, is it? Now that they're in there, I won't make any more jokes about New Zealand because they're doing pretty well. Welcome along, Yachting New Zealand. Fantastic to have you here. So the person sort of shook it off. You can just see them now sort of moved on, and the person to my left stopped talking, and the person I'm referring to then continued their talking. Now, this might happen once or twice more in the future at our exec meetings, our managers' meetings. I think it was about the third meeting in. This happened again. The person was talking, the person over the other side of the room interrupted, and the person to my right said, "Excuse me, can you please let me finish?" Now, we've moved from this discomfort where they feel awkward about it, but they don't say anything. And now we've got an incident. We've got an overt incident that has occurred. The person to my right said, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, so sorry. Please forgive me." But because this person was wired to interrupt people and they didn't get it, several meetings later, it happened. It continued each meeting. And then at the I don't know what number of meetings it was at, but the person interrupted them once again. And they said, the person that was interrupted said, "Excuse me, please. I would really appreciate it if you didn't interrupt me while I was speaking. This has been an ongoing habit. I think it's very disrespectful." Now we've gone from a little tiny incident to this misunderstanding type thing. All right. Then we moved on to, and because I work in the world of management, leadership and influence, I'm very interested in human behavior. And at the next meeting, you could see this person that they came in, and there's a bit of tension between them. The person who kept interrupting said, "Oh, good evening." And the other person just went to the old head thing. At this point in time, what we find around tension, the person who is feeling that tension will prefer to run down to IKEA, buy a chair and build a chair in the meeting than sit next to the person that they're having tension with. And so it's just this. Now, no one else has known this and is not realizing this, and it's just happening. And eventually, here's what happened. And I heard this from the president a bit later on, that the person who had been constantly interrupted had gone to them as a president and said, "Hey, you have a choice. Either that person goes or I'm leaving." So now we've got this crisis thing. Now, crisis is basically an interruption about where the normal movements and the normal conversations with what we've got. Now, that can erupt as pointing in the chest and poking the chest and yelling and screaming, through to fighting. That's the extreme. Hopefully you don't get that often. Through to people being a lot more passively about it and just leaving the committee. Now, here's the thing. I want you to put a tick on my screen or a yes on my screen if you've experienced or seen that process in your sport or private or business world. Give me a tick, give me a smile, give me something. Or, yeah, got a few ticks, got some green ticks there. Thanks very much. More ticks. Excellent, thank you. Good, I'm not alone. Now, here's the thing though. Here's my question. While you've got your little texting tools ready to go, I want you to think about this. If you were the president of that organization, and I must admit, I should have stepped in as well, but it was just interesting to watch. And I didn't think it would go any further. Where would you want to interrupt or do something about this conflict? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? So you're the president, you're the, or someone within that committee. Where should we be intervening? Thank you, blue circle. Where else have we got? So someone said discomfort. What about everyone else? What are we thinking? Oh, Johnny's pointing to 1 as well. Johnny's found the point button. Thank you very much. Karen, Clayton, Amanda have all said 1 or 2. They're coming through thick and fast, so I can't keep up with everyone. Yeah, you're right. Here's the thing, that we want to manage what we classify as conflict all the way down at 1 or 2 or even 3 at the latest. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, when we do that, what we find, we have this Australian culture thing, and probably the same in New Zealand, I just saw people from there, is that we do the she'll be right, mate, or we don't notice. It's just something. Now, the really interesting thing in the sports world, so a good example is if someone blowing up at an official, after the water, they come, they sail up and come alongside the support vehicle or the where the officials are, and they just blow up in a million pieces. Here's the thing to remember, though. That doesn't necessarily mean they're angry with that official, but they've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're now at 5 with officials. That makes sense? So here in Western Australia, just recently we saw on the news, well, when we started junior sport again, we saw a parent running out in the field and punching an official. Now, obviously, we've got some people who are just psychologically struggling and they'll do that. But if we take that aside, that is crisis, and that hasn't just occurred. There's a very good chance that person, that parent, has gone through each of the stages over either 1 season or 2 seasons. So one of the things I really want you to understand tonight, I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how to deal with it 4 and 5, that higher end, but all the tips and tricks we come up with can be used down at the discomfort end as well and everywhere in between. But I want you, as movers and shakers of the sailing world here in Australia and New Zealand, is that you step up and do something about conflict way down here rather than waiting until it happens in the crisis stage. And the reason for that is just obviously, the obvious reason is we've now got these 2 people in our organizations doing this. But here's the second thing. I found that when people get into tension and crisis, they don't do it alone. They start building armies to take on and get people who agree with them, and if they disagree with, they push those people away. So suddenly we've got this really toxic environment. So one of the things I really encourage with what we talk about tonight is that we definitely take on the idea of actually getting getting involved at that 1, 2, or 3 level. Alrighty, so let's keep moving on. So here's what I'd love to do. I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to see how this goes. This is going to work out really fantastic, or it's going to go really poorly. I'm going to send you out into breakout rooms. And this is going to be a record for me because there's 40 people in the room. I send out to 10 breakout rooms. When you go into your breakout rooms, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. So it's going to be fast talking. And I want you to come up with some prevention and management strategies that you could come up with to either prevent conflict and or manage conflict. When we come back, I'm going to ask you to type them on my list so we can help each other out. So what will happen now is I'm going to press create breakout rooms. You'll be, a thing will pop up on your screen saying do you want to go to the breakout rooms? Just click yes. You'll go into the breakout rooms. Make sure you're unmuted, all right? And you'll be able to have conversation. But I'm only going to give you 3 minutes. When you land in there, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I'll give you a 1 minute warning and you'll automatically come back. All right? Has everyone got their fingers crossed? Here we go. Ready, set, go. Woo. All right, click on that message that came up. There we go. Good. People have got the hang of it. Come on, come on, come on. Should be right there on the screen. Or people aren't listening or watching. There we go. Come on, Libby, press on that button. I can see you're not joined in breakout room 5. Hang on, I'll unmute you. Hang on, I'll unmute you. There we go. Can you see the button, Libby? Oh, hang on, you're still not unmuted. There we go.
Press it. I can see it and I pressed it.
Oh, nothing's happening. It's unusual. Oh, well, you can just have a think of yourself. How's that?
I'm happy to chat amongst myself.
Oh, yeah, okay. You know you're listening then.
Yeah, I'm listening, paying very close attention.
All right, who else is in there? Libby, I'll talk to. John, Sarah, just Raina is in group breakout. Where's Ian, Lisa, and Liz?
I was in a room, but nothing happened.
As in, no one turned up? Where are you, Sarah?
It said there was two. It said there was. Hang on, I'll turn on my video. I've got the kids. Yeah, I was in a room, but it said there was 2 in there, but I couldn't find them.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens.
I was sharing their screen.
Who was? Someone else was?
Yeah.
But they weren't talking to you?
I didn't want to look at their, I felt bad looking at their desktops. So.
Yeah, that can get embarrassing.
Yeah.
I guess Raina's come out as well because no one was in his room whatsoever. So, yeah, what happens is people come into the webinar and then they wander off and they have tea and coffee and all that sort of stuff and they don't watch. So I'm only giving them a couple of minutes. So where are you from, Sarah?
I live in Mount Martha, but I work at Blackgowrie Yacht Squadron.
Ah, so you're the safety. Did I see what safety?
Oh, looks like there's a few in the area, actually.
Oh, Diane. Yeah, Diane is from Safety Beach next to Mount Martha. And Clayton said as he's in Perth. Is your club open or is it?
No, everything's, we were minimising and now everything's shut, even the marina. Yeah.
Oh, you poor things. Poor things. I feel guilty being here in Western Australia where everything's basically normal.
Oh, look, hopefully we can be in that state soon, that stage.
If you don't get dumb people doing dumb stuff.
Mm.
All right, everyone's coming back now. Crew.
Yeah, stop bagging the Victorians, Ian. I heard that.
Yeah, but they're so easy to do. Well, it's not all Victorians. It's just some very select ones. All right, people, as you come back in, hey, jump on my whiteboard or again on chat, but prefer on whiteboard so everyone can see what you're saying, and give me some prevention strategies you came up with and some management strategies that you came up with. Go for it. Let's see what you came up with. Okay, so just make sure you're on mute as well, because I'm hearing some feedback and your TVs and all that sort of stuff as well. I heard someone just say, "Where's mute?" All right, early on, take them aside with a large stick or what? All right. Set communication and give them a bit of a, and you shouldn't leave that blank. Let's see who can be the first person to change the color of their text as well. You can't do it on the screen, that's fine. Put it down in the chat box.
Ian, would you mind just repeating how to get onto that whiteboard? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, mate. So have you got you should have a menu with T, squiggly line, straight line in front of you. Can you see that?
No, I'm not seeing that.
Have you got a one that says mute, stop video,
I've
participants?
got mute and stop video yet.
Have you got one? Have you got a button there that says annotate?
No.
Okay. What about view options? One of those two? Or you can just chat or type in the chat box, dude.
Cut in the box. Okay.
Yeah, might be easier for an hour session.
The view button might be at the top of your screen.
Oh, yeah, it could be. Yeah, thank you, whoever said that. So, Ryan, it's also at the very top of your screen where, just like on Word or Excel.
Yeah, just found it. Thanks very much.
No worries, mate. Good work. Thank you for that person that jumped in. Good leadership, clear line under prevention, code of conduct. Love it. All right, what do we got over here? Management is clear communication. Someone couldn't decide if it was a prevention strategy. Early on, take them aside and give them a bit of a heads up so they're not embarrassed. But get a bit of insight, identify issues, solution focused rather than promised. Love it. Debrief after meeting if that's the case. Oh, geez. Set ground rules to start off with. Everyone has the right to be heard. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a key. Good meeting chair. All right, it's really key to that one. They like to be treated. Heads up. Good one. All right, so fantastic. So the whole stack of things there that you can do. Now, here's a couple of things I want you to remember is that on the management side, this is where I don't go deeply into this. But Kate, Kate, if you just remind me to do this, I'll send you a workbook that we use for, or Department of Sport and Rec here in WA. I'll get permission to send that to everyone as a resource. And in that, from a West Australian perspective, we've got a list of all the policies and procedures that we would expect a sporting organisation to have. Don't be scared. I would use that as a resource just to tick it off as a check-in on how you're going. But also Sailing Australia, I would have no doubt, would have some sort of, sort of list that they would encourage their organisations to follow as well. So on the chat, we've got remove the conflict point, clear processes and stick with the process. Informal meetings, written information about contentious issues to be shared in advance. Love it. So here's the thing. I think a lot of the conflict that we can, that occurs within sporting clubs or in business or everywhere else you're looking at can be really reduced by having policies and procedures and guidelines in place prior to this occurring. But here's the thing that people forget. Actually communicate what that's all about. All right. So they communicate and show that they've got codes of conduct. They will communicate and show that they've got tribunal type policies and dress policies and all those other people, and let people have clear access to it. So at the beginning of the season, one of the things I'd really encourage you to do is really highlight the important policies and procedures that are important. One of my tips that I did at one of my little athletics organisations I was involved in with my kids was the code of conduct. I did one or two things. One is I got every single person to sign the code of conduct, not just flick it around the club. I got them to sign it. Or I got smarter the second year, is on their enrolment form, it says that I have cited and agreed with the codes of conduct for X sailing club. Right, and get them to sign that. Because one of the hardest things that if they are breaching the codes of conduct and you go up and have a conversation with them, they can easily turn and go, I didn't know about that. But if you hold up the piece of paper, metaphorically, you can point to them and say, hey, you said you agreed to this and you are now breached that. We need to have a conversation. The other tip that I give sporting clubs that I found, I spent 20 years at the Department of Sport and Recreation here in WA. So I got phone calls about this sort of stuff all the time. I'm talking weekly, every Monday morning. There was 10 or 20 of them. The code of conduct. Make sure that it is linked to some sort of other process, e.g. your tribunal process. Because sometimes people go, the code of conduct, but there's no bylaw or no policy linking the code of conduct to a consequence type process like the tribunal. Because if you came up to me at a sailing club and you said, Cross, you've just breached 10 codes of the conduct, I'd go, and we're going to meet with the tribunal on Wednesday night to find out what we're going to do. I say, can you please show me either constitution, bylaws, or a policy where it says that those two things link? Just checking on that one. All righty. And over the management deal with it, enforce ground rules and meeting procedures, all that sort of stuff. Fantastic. So you've got the idea. There's a whole stack of stuff, and hopefully you've got some tips from each other there. But let's now move on to the next. So I'm just muting myself. There we go. All righty. So I'm going to give you some real quick tips and tricks on how you, all right, you as an individual can manage conflict. Now, we can easily use all these tips and tricks to really enhance our communication, but we're going to talk about difficult people and conflict. We can use those terms interchangeably. If you've seen this before, it comes from a really great book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's from a guy called Stephen Covey, and I highly recommend that you read the book because it's well worth a read. But secondly, I also, if you're not a big reader, check it out on YouTube. People have done some really fantastic things. So basically what Stephen Covey found out was that effective communicators, effective leaders, effective people in general, they communicate and process information differently to less effective people. And what he found was that when information, whether it's conflict driven or just normal communication, comes into my world, I ask myself 3 questions. And once you're good at this, you ask it subconsciously. And the first one is, what can I control? And the only thing that you can control is you. All right. If you get angry, that's your choice. If you get sad, that's your choice. If you're happy, that's your choice. If you get excited, that's your choice. Now, it's a very complex choice, but ultimately that. Now, when we talk about conflict, here's what I want you to control: is that I want you to understand that 99 times out of 100, if they're in conflict with you, it's not about you. Oh, look at Johnny go. He put a Wikipedia link to where you can go with the 7 habits. Find it on YouTube, smartass. All right, that will really help people out. There's one with 1.3 million views. All right, it's one of those hand-drawn ones. And you can listen as you go along, Johnny. Thanks for that, mate. The only thing, when we're doing conflict, here's what I want you to remember. I want you to be in complete control of yourself. Because if we get angry, we get frustrated, we get annoyed with these people, that takes us away from really being able to deal with a conflict really, really well. So I have a saying. There's a saying right here in front of me on my desk in my office. And I have only one saying on my walls here. And it basically is this: the person in the room with the greatest behavioral flexibility will always control the room. Let me say that again. The person in the room with the greatest behavioral flexibility will control the room. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean by the person who remains calm in a conflict situation is now in control. Now, I don't mean that as a power thing, but in control, and I'm the calm one in the rooms, I can choose any emotion that I want to deal with this situation. If I've run out to anger, before I can choose any other emotion, I've got to come back to calmness before I can choose another one. And by running out to anger, not a large percentage of the population will go to anger with you. So I want you to be the Zen master in conflict. And that's really going to annoy some people, because people want, some people who want to find problems and take you on the journey with them. Don't be those people. I want you to be the calm, relaxed person. The second question would be, can I influence it? So if they come with you with a conflict situation, the question I want you to ask yourself is, what are they saying and how are they saying it? And the question will be, based on what they're saying, can I influence it directly? If you can't influence it either at all, e.g., so if we're in Western Australia down at the Royal Perth Sailing Club and we're standing on the docks at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, and they're arguing with me and getting really angry at a crisis level about something that Sailing Australia has put in place, I can't influence it right now. So that's one of the things we can either say to them, hey, look, we can have this conversation as long as we want, but at this point in time, the decisions around what you're talking about is so far out of my influence. We need to talk to Sailing Australia on Monday morning. For goodness sake, don't dive into something that you can't control and influence, because it's a waste of time. So we want to guide conversations, in particular difficult people and conflicting people. We want to keep driving them to things that we can influence. But they won't do that. They will go everywhere else if they're in that crisis mode. Now, if I can't control it and I can't influence it, we need to let go of it. All righty. So a great example of this is that you might walk up to someone who's just coming off their laser. They've been racing all day, and you have to give them some bad news about one of, they've done an incorrect turn, or they've gone across the start line before the gun's gone off, or whatever it is. And you're having a chat to them, and they're going, well, such and such craft did that, and such, you'll let them do it. You need to let that go, because I can't control and can't influence it. And one of the best statements you can do is say, hey, look, if I see them doing it, I have no problems in managing that as well. But you were caught, you were seen, we're going to manage that. So see how I've taken stuff that I can't deal with, and I've brought it back into what I can influence. Now, here's a little trick, and you get nothing out of tonight except two things. One, check your policies and procedures. And number two, this is the question. This is a really key thing. When people are in crisis, especially that tension crisis, they'll come to you and they'll start spewing out all this information. And it doesn't necessarily mean they'll do it in anger point of view. It might be, very calm, but they're just spewing out information to you. Here's two tricks around that. When they go, all right, your question from now on is, when they stop, is, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your honesty. Is there anything else? And when you say anything else, they'll then launch into the next bit. And when they stop again, go, thank you for the information. Is there anything else? And I want you to keep going until they look at you and go, no, there isn't. Now, what tends to happen is two things. One, they'll wear themselves out and they'll get all their emotions out of the system, so therefore it's a lot better. But here's a real interesting thing, and if we've got any psychs or counsellors in the room, you'll understand this, is towards the end of their rambling, the real things that are upsetting them will appear. So keep your eye out for that. Now, here's the next thing. Once they've rambled on and they've done their thing, your next question is this. When they reply, no, there's nothing else, is this. You look at them, and with empathy and no smart assness whatsoever, you look at them and go, so out of all the things that you just told me, and I appreciate your honesty, or some sort of empathetic statement, out of all the things that you just said to me, what are the things that you can control and what can you influence? And the reason I think this is so important is because all that emotional stuff that they've just spewed out at you falls away. And what is left is the 1, 2, 3 things that we can actually influence. But a lot of people get caught up in the emotion of the conversation, and they start grabbing at things that appear as they go along, and it's not the real stuff. It's stuff that the person that's speaking to you can't control and influence, and it's stuff that you can't control and influence. But you want to help, you start grabbing it. So let them go, hear what they've said towards the end, and then ask the question, what can we control and what can we influence? And then here's another question for you. A lot of times I'll say, I don't know, because it's a big question for people who are in crisis or in tension. And if you hear anyone say that anytime, here's your question back at them. Well, if you did know, what would it be? Because that will just force their brain to solution. That will force their brain, give them a bit extra time to come to where you need them to come to. And so what I did just recently, 2 weeks ago, when I was called in to mediate this conversation between, I asked these questions. I did exactly what I just described to you. And when I said to the people, so Alison, tell me, what are out of all the things that you've told me, what are those things that you can control and influence? And Alison, made up name now, gave me 2 or 3 bits of information. I said, well, what should we do with the other information? And they literally said, let it go. And this very simple things that you can do requires, one, you to be the Zen master, calm, but simply doing this, it just changes everything. Gets rid of it, reduces the emotion, not necessarily gets rid of, reduces the emotion, and gives you real information that you can deal with. The next thing is this. Now, here's what I would like you to do. Oh boy, we're going to have to work fast. Can I get you to draw that on a piece of paper? All right, very quickly. All I need is 2 lines in across. All you need to write, task, people, details, big picture. That's all I want you to do. All right, 10 seconds. Just quickly draw it. Doesn't have to be neat. Just write it down. Excellent. All righty. So here's the really interesting thing about people. What we found is this, that the way that people take in information, process it, and spit it out again, whether written or verbal or draw or whatever, all of us have default settings. And that isn't exactly the same as conflict, about how we process the conflict, how we work with it in our head, and how we then talk about it out loud. We have default settings. Now, default settings are wonderful, all right? Allows us to walk through life and be able to do things without expending too much energy. But here's the thing. So let's say Angela. So Angela Summers is over here, and this is her style of communicating. All right, so she runs into the world because she doesn't know any of this stuff, and she runs into the world and communicates with the world like that. Now, if she rocks up to someone with the same style, same preference, they will click and the communication will be easy. But if she rocks up to me and she's got that style and I've got this style, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to clash. So what I'm going to talk you through now is identifying what your default setting is. Or your default setting is, so when you get into conversations, when you get into conflict, that you can shape the way that you communicate to match that person next to you. Now, I want you to hear this really carefully though. When I say match, I am not saying to change your values, your beliefs, or the message that you're sending. All I'm saying is wrap it up in a different type of wrapper. That's it. So some people say, oh, I'm dropping my values and beliefs. No, all it is I just change the way that I communicate. Now, we do this naturally. Do you talk the same way to a 25-year-old as a 75-year-old? And do you talk the same way to either of those as you do a toddler or a primary school children? That's all we're saying. Same message, but with adults, we just want to shape it so it's the same. So the psychologists have found it. Now, if anyone's done DISC, or MBTI or something similar, this will become very obvious to you. But and to tell you the truth, if I had to give you one thing that gives me an unfair advantage over people in regards to delivering communication and influential information, it's this. Because if I walk up, Cole just said, if both parties change their style, don't you now have two different unmatched styles? Correct. But the smart person changes again. And there's very few people in the world that would be able to do what we're talking about and match, especially in conflict. It requires you to be in that control situation. If this person is in conflict, they're going to stay in their natural style. It's going to take you to match them. All righty? So the psychologists have found, so if you've done MBTI or DISC, this will become pretty clear to you. It's pretty obvious. But if the communication I'm having with someone isn't landing, I literally go back to my head to this and check if I'm delivering it the right way. So basically, here's what we found. That people have a preference. Now, hear that. They have a preference in regards to the way they like to communicate. And we tend to find they fall along two different continuums. The first one I want to look at is the top to bottom, the task focus, people focus. What we tend to find is that people have a preference of either being task focused, and task focused people are the ones that would prefer to type away on computers, get things done, solve problems really quickly, move on, keep it going. They'd prefer to do that than walk up to people and go, hey, Alison, how you doing? Hey, Amanda, you have a good day, and really interact with people that way. Now, it doesn't mean they can't do that second bit. They just prefer to do the first bit. And if we look at jobs, have a think about what sort of jobs would attract that task-focused person. Accountant, engineer, data entry people, coders, computer coders. Can you see where I'm going with this? All right, that style is perfect for their job. Whereas we've got the other people down the bottom, which are people focused, and their preference is to go over and check in with people and see how they're doing. And when they think about the impact of things on people, they think about how that will influence. Will people be angry? Will they be sad? Where task-focused people go, hey, we need to raise the fees because it's really important for our club to survive. The people-focused people will go, hang on a second, everyone's going to be annoyed. Now, can you see from those 2 points of view, if we don't understand that, suddenly we're at conflict already? So the jobs that attract people-focused people, primary school teachers, high school teachers, mostly high school teachers. Who else? Counselors, psychologists, etc., etc. You know where I'm going with this. And so some good examples of where you could sit on both is nurses, for example. If nurses choose a career, you'll tend to find that people that are in ER by choice are more task focused. You think about their job. People come in, they start their heart, they sew them up, they move them on. Right? It's their job. It makes them good at their job. Versus a palliative care nurse, which tends to be more people focused. You see where I'm going with this? So here's what I want you to do really quickly. I want you, on the piece of paper that you've just drawn, I want you to draw a mark. Where do you think you sit along those two lines? Now, the only place you can't be tonight is there. You can't be in the middle because that's just fence sitting. If we did the whole profile thing with questions and all the other bits and pieces, you could definitely be in the middle there, but not necessarily tonight, all right? So 10 seconds to do that, just on the piece of paper. All right, cool. Then we've got this horizontal one where we have introverts and extroverts. Now, extroverts tend to be big pictured in their wiring up in their brains. And extrovert simply means that they get their energy and they process a lot of things outside themselves. So if an extrovert has a lot of problems or issues that they need to solve, they will seek out someone to talk it through. If they want to recharge their batteries at the end of the day or at the end of the week, they're the ones that will seek out other people to hang out with. And it doesn't necessarily mean big parties and, you know, down at the yacht club at 3 o'clock in the morning with underwear on your head, dancing, pole dancing or whatever it is. It's just they just like being around. They get their energy. If they can't find people to talk to about their problems and issues, what they tend to find is they'll just start talking to themselves. All right? And that's fine. So in the world of conflict, these are the people who are going to say a lot. All right? It's going to go on and 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 on. And not because, of any other reason, except that what they're doing is actually processing the conflict out here. Whereas my introverts are the complete opposite. They're detail-oriented. They process the problems and their thoughts internally. So everything an extrovert does here, an introvert does here. Now, can you see, without even going any further, if we don't understand extrovert and introvert, how we've got conflict could occur in the meeting room? So if I'm an extrovert and I look at an introvert, the extrovert's talking away, looks across at the introvert, and they're not saying anything. So they roll their eyes and go, oh, they're not interested. But the human brain doesn't go any further. It always goes further by making judgment. They're not listening. They're not engaged. They're a waste of space. They shouldn't be on the committee. No, they're just being introverts. Because here on the other side, on the introvert side, they're looking at the extrovert, who the extroverts are going, and the introverts are going, oh, for goodness sake, shut up. See where I'm going with this? So I want you to be aware of this when we have that conversation. In the world of conflict, introverts will tend to speak a lot quieter. They will say less words, but they'll be very thought out words. And so straight away you can see. So what I need you to do now is, someone's already done it for me, is make a mark along the horizontal line. Now, once you've got two of your lines, I then want you to join them up. So if you go from there, if you go join those two lines there, or that line there to that line there, all right, so it lands in one of the boxes. All right, once you've done that on your piece of paper, there you go, cool. You can do it on the grid as well. What I want you to do is this for me. I want you to either put a dot across or wherever your two joins up, or if you can't do that on my screen, just write what grid quadrant do you sit in, all right? I'm going to give you 15 seconds to do that because we're screaming through time like you wouldn't believe it. All right, just put a mark where you are. Good. Let's go. Or 4, thank you, Sarah, well done. Well, someone's found the stars and hearts. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Karen, gotcha. So she's in 3. Quadrant 4, thanks you, Mimi. Angela, 4, Ryan, 2, thank you. Ned, 4. Thank you. All right, stop. Everyone stop. All righty. So remember what quadrant you're in. All right, because I'm going to flash up something on the next screen for you, but I have to clear everyone's, all the drawings follow us. All righty. Okay, do that. All righty. Now, I want you to think about the quadrants you're in and then read what your description is. And is that close? Now, while you do that, I want you to remember this. The description that you're facing now, you're looking at, is if your dot was way out here on the very limits of that. So it's extreme versions of it. As we move in or up or across, here's what happens is, so if my line was like that, all right, compared to the line that's all the way out here in one of the quadrants, I will look like I will behave very differently. Why? Because as we move in or move towards other quadrants, we start taking on elements of that quadrants. And if we did this professionally with a questionnaire, et cetera, there'd be 180 dots. All right, well, there could be 180 dots around my screen. So that's a lot. All right. So here's what I want you to do is I want you to look at each of the quadrants you're in, and that's what we tend to find the behaviors that you will display. Now, can you see, oh, come on. Can you see that if these two people here were talking, so this person down the bottom right-hand corner is people orientated and big picture, are talking to these people up in the top here, over here, they're all about details and preciseness. If we weren't aware of that, can you see how those are very, very different conversations? So the bottom right person, if they're going to have a conversation or manage conflict with the top left-hand corner, be prepared to hear a lot of detail and provide a lot of detail. And the top left-hand corner with the bottom right-hand corner, you need to loosen up and give bigger picture and talk about how the conflict is impacting on people. All right? And same with these two here. All right? The top right-hand corner, so the person here, all right, that's Donald Trump. All right, over here, the one that's over here, that's Dr. Sheldon Cooper of the Big Bang Theory. This is down the bottom right-hand corner here. That is Penny, if you're into Big Bang, this is. And over here is Rajesh. All right, so you'll get an idea of what they're like. So the idea behind this is if your communication is, if the person you're talking to is frustrating the hell out of you in regards to how they're communicating, it's probably because they're in the opposite quadrants. And all I want you to do is be aware of that, calm yourself down and start shaping your communication back to them. So I'm over here. So no, I'm not. I'm there. That's my dot there. I spend a lot of my time with people here, engineers, geologists, etc. in that. So I've got to shape my communication with lots of details to the point to really reach these people. Okay? And they have to do the opposite to me, and we tend to practice that. So if you want more information now, obviously I'm just wary of time tonight. Invite me back if you want more detail. We'll do something for you. Is just look up disk profile or disk types, and you will be inundated with information across the web, okay? All righty, there we go. Whew. This is one of my favorite things, and this is probably one of the most powerful things that we can get out of tonight. What we tend to find is that our brain, while we are awake, receives 11 million bits of information. Now, it receives 11 million bits of information every second of the day that we're awake. Now, can you imagine if 11 million bits of information got in my head every second and it was unfiltered? Our head will literally go boop, and we'd fall over and twitch and whatever we do. All righty? Got that picture in my head now. But the brain's been pretty smart, and it's got this little filtering system called the reticular activating system. And basically, it's a very simple, easy to use filter system that filters information based on two things, and two things only. Number one, the first criteria for filtering is, am I safe? So right now, even in your home or at the club or wherever you are, your brain is going around the room going, is everything safe? Is everything safe? Is everything safe? Now, we know this is working because you would experience if someone, if the boom of one of your yachts, for example, you're doing your work and you've just caught it out on your peripheral vision and someone's done a jibe. So someone just said disc skills are difficult to implement. Nope, not at all. It's challenging, but you just keep shifting it. For every time I talk to 5 different people, I'm going to change it. If I'm doing a general conversation to people, I'm going to give evidence in task, and I'm going to give people evidence. I'm going to give big picture information, and I'm going to get detailed information. And I'm just going to keep going up and down. It's what I do every day with classrooms of 20 to 30 people. Alrighty, but I guess also with this conflict thing, we're talking usually just one-on-one or one-on-two, so it's a little bit different. So for the RAS, so if the boom, you're doing some work, you're bringing in some ropes and the boom's coming towards you, you don't actually see it, you just catch it in your peripheral vision, but you still do that, or you put your hand up, this is the thing that's doing it for you. Because if we had to consciously be aware of that, the boom coming across, by the time we looked, analysed it, started contracting our muscles to move, we would have copped it in the head. And I'm sure some of you have done that, including. The second thing it filters is this, things that we are interested in. So here's the thing that I can tell you categorically. You will hear more conversations around sailing. You'll see more information. You'll see more boats. You'll see more types. You'll meet more people that are into sailing than I do. Why? Because as much as I love sailing, it's not as big a thing for me as it is you. And so therefore, because your brain goes, hey, I like sailing, it takes in that information called sailing. I guarantee that, that in my world of professional speaking and training, I hear so much more about communication and influence and all that sort of stuff because it's my world and I'm interested in it. Now, why am I telling you this? Because this is that question. What can we control and what can we influence? Because what we want to try and do is get rid of all the malarkey. And the thing that we know about the RAS, love this part about the RAS, is that it loves questions. So if a question comes into my brain, the brain must answer it. All right, let me try this out. Let me try this across the Southern Hemisphere, because I've got New Zealand here, so tell me, what is your favorite type of sailing craft? Now, even if you went, no, I'm not answering it, somewhere in the back of your head, you're going, oh, it's this. See how you instantly answer questions? Now, this is an absolute weapon of choice when we're doing conflict conversations, is to ask questions that drive us to solutions. And you've already heard me ask a few. So tell me, out of all those things that you just told me, what are some of the things that you can control and influence? Now, the really key thing about this is they might not answer it out of here, but they will. They will answer it in here at the very least. Because what happens is I'll answer it here and they don't want to answer it because it helps you. And if they're really angry with you, they don't want to do that. So you've got to trust the process a little bit. So I want you to start asking questions to people. All right? And the people who have the greatest influence over other people are those who can ask the best questions. And the type of question, let me go to this one first and I'll come back to that slide. The best questions is this, because this is really rushed and I understand that you probably want to dwell a little bit better, but let me help you out on the type of questions. I want them solution focused. So I want questions that move both the person that you're in conflict with and also the whole conversation towards solution. So for example, the best question that you can possibly ask you after you've asked any more, what can I control and influence, is this question here. So tell me, David, for us to move forward and to solve this problem, what has to happen? Now, again, trust the process. Even if they don't answer it, their brain must run to solution. But what we tend to find in a lot of committees and one-on-one people is people like to dive below the line, which is, this problem, the issue, and they keep diving. Do you know people like that? They just love living in conflict. They just love living in problems. And every time you see them, they're going to tell you how bad, they'll win $10 million and then tell you that they should have won $12 million if they had one more number on Lotto or something like that. Please tell me I'm not the only one to experience that. So even you've got people like that, you want to keep dragging them up. So if they go, the racing today was really crap. Instead of going, why was it crap? right, which takes them deeper into the problem, you go, so what would happen for you to make it better? Now, that does two things. One, they will spin on their heels and leave because you're not fulfilling what they're looking for. Or if you do it enough, and you do it respectfully, with empathy, all right, if you do it enough, they won't ever come up to you again. And that's a win in my case as well. All righty, so in regards to the questions, I want you to be above the line, solution focused. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to dip down below the lines now and again, because here's the thing. We have to identify the problem before we can go above the line. But for goodness sake, if they say, you know, I really thought the officiating was really bad today, for goodness sake, don't ask them why. Ask them, what could you do about it? And here's the thing that we find, that leaders and influencers within organizations such as the ones you belong to are the ones that keep above the line. They're the influential people, and they're the people that people want to be around. And the people who don't want to be around, you probably don't want in your club anyway, all right? Because they're going to be below the line. All right, two more tricks before we finish up. Is this. When people are in conflict with each other, all right, from, you know, even down around that 4 all the way up to the crisis version, they're angry, they're frustrated, and what happens then is their body starts to shut down and the body starts sending blood and good stuff to their arms and legs, because way back when that sort of conflict feeling occurred, we're fighting for our lives. So the body automatically redirects blood to my arms and my legs to do that, fight, or flight, or run away. And while it does that, it actually narrows our vision. And so when we're in conflict, or when you see people fight, which is the highest level of crisis, they approach each other like this. Why? Because that's where their view is. They can only see that. And so if you're about to have a conflict conversation, let's start off with that. So you know that you're going to walk up to Cindy, for example, and you have to talk a very difficult conversation that may end in conflict. For goodness sake, do not approach her like that. Stand to the side, so like you've got an L shape, or sit with her in an L shape. If you've ever been to a counselor or a psychologist, you will notice that that's how they set up their seats. This is why it builds much more rapport. Now, if Craig comes up to me and he's really annoyed, let's use that word, I was going to say something else, and he's right there in front of me, here's what I'm going to do. I know that I have to get out of that line of sight to calm him down. So if I'm on a jetty, out in a boat, or in the club room, and someone's really angry at me, they're going to approach me like this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to step to one foot and try to get out of there, that very foveal or tunnel vision that you have. Now, they're going to be pissed off, so they're going to follow me. All I'm going to do then is this, and then they'll follow me. And I'll keep going until they stop and they are okay with me. And when I do this with people, I think that if I do it enough, I get about for those really crisis, yelling, screaming type people, I get about a 30% drop in emotions just by doing this. And by doing that, I can have better conversations. Now, here's the thing. You might feel like an idiot talking or thinking about doing that as part of this communication, about part of this conflict. But here's the thing. I've been doing this for years, and someone who's in conflict does not notice it, right? They're just they're concentrating on something else, all right? Everything else except what you're doing. And it's very, very subtle, all right? So you can do two things. One, you can drive people to that place, all right? So get them off center to you actually standing shoulder to shoulder with them if you wanted to. Or if I'm going to have that conflict conversation, or the difficult conversation, or that one that could leap into conflict with, you know, Christian, for example, I'm going to set up in this situation to help me along. So how do we use all this as we move along, move towards our time together coming to an end? This is how we bunch it all together. So someone comes to you in conflict. And again, it can be whatever level that you want. Just down towards 1 and 2, the conversation is going to be a lot shorter and a lot less tense than it is up the top. It's exactly the same rules and regulations. The first thing I want to gather as much information as you possibly can. So, you know, Clayton comes up to me and is in conflict, and he takes off and he starts talking. I'm going to listen empathetically, and I'm really going to listen to him. I'll go, yep, I hear what you're saying. Thanks for that. That's interesting. All those bits encourage him. When he stops, I'm going to say, look, that's really interesting, Clayton. Is there anything else? And he'll go on again, and I'm going to keep going and keep going. And then I'm going to say something along the lines of, so all the stuff that you've just said to me, tell me, what are some of the things that you can control and influence? And again, you might just see it all drop away and the emotions drop. Or you might have to say, if they say, I don't know, ask the question, well, if you did know, what would it be? And once they go, it's this, this, and this, that's really getting my goat. And I'll go, hey, thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Because people want to be heard as well. Sometimes conflict is just simply about people wanting to be heard. And then the next step is that solution focus. And you can say, hey, let's take the first thing that you said. How do we move past that? What's some of the things that we need to put in place? Now, here's the thing I want you to remember, though. You don't have to agree with it, because some of it could be ridiculous, but at least you know where they're aiming. So if they say, hey, I want all my membership fees back for the last 10 years because I've been so unhappy, that might be it. Then your response is, at least you know what they're aiming for, and you can then take it from that point and move it to where you want to. If you don't ask that question, you are shooting in the dark. And so therefore, I will say something along, if they said something ridiculous like that, I'll say, look, I hear what you're saying. Although 10 years of membership fee is not really reasonable, let's look at something else. Right? So I've gone, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but let's check in on something else. And eventually people come up with usually reasonable things. And you imagine if you ask that question and they get to a point where you agree with it and you go, let's do that then. Their heads are literally going to explode because they've come with conflict, they've come up with a solution, they're going to feel great. All righty. And the final one is, I've already said that. What actions do need, what has to happen for us to move forward? What has to happen? What actions do we need to take to get there? And we could talk about that. Now, suddenly we've gone from this emotional thing to my left all the way to some very solution-focused type conversations. And the way that we do that all the way through is, as you can see down the bottom there, the reticular activating system is constantly drive people to the solution by asking them questions. All right. And if you've ever done coaching, if you ever have someone with you that's really influential, they ask you questions and guide you through this process type part. Now, here's the thing I want to finish up with. Yes, I would love you to be able to deal with the conflict, and I'd love you to have a magic wand that allows you to get rid of conflict very, very quickly every single time. But here's the thing I want you to remember. If you feel unsafe or they are being inappropriate in your personal space, that you feel very uncomfortable, here's what I want you to do. Ready? Walk away. Right? We're not UN negotiators, nor should we have to deal with people being that aggressive to us. We are working in sailing. Right? It's not World War III that we're negotiating. It is sailing. So be okay. And here's a little tip. First person, if you're going round and round circles or someone is threatening you, the first person that says, hey, this isn't working, let's take a break and maybe we can talk about this later, or we will talk about this later, and walks away, is now in control, all right? Because they've been able to stand back, be in that Zen moment, see it's not working, and look at a strategy. All righty? Please make sure you do that, all right? So that's it. Woo! All right, that was 1 hour really quickly. Hey, I'm really happy to hang around and answer some questions for a little while. I have another one of these at 5:30 with people, a 2.5 hour version of this across Western Australia at 5:20, but I'm really happy to spend some time.
Hey, Ian, thanks for the presentation. I've really enjoyed tonight.
Ryan, you sound surprised.
Also, I was going to ask you just to repeat for everyone's benefit again, what's the poster you've got in your office?
The person in the room with the greatest behavioural flexibility will always control the room. The person in the room with the greatest behavioural flexibility controls the room. And what I mean by that is the person who can remain calm when everyone else is annoyed is in control. If you want more information about that, look up emotional intelligence. Yeah, thanks, Libby. Thanks, James. So I'm going to say farewell. If you want to leave, thanks very much. If you want to ask some questions, Julia's gone very intense and very good. My intenseness reduces during over the lines. So thank you, Diane. Hope it all helped. Everyone, look after themselves. Farewell. Thank you very much. We'll catch you later.